All right, everybody, welcome to the Fantasy Timeline. Wow, it's episode 21. Am I right about that?
You are.
Wow, episode 21. We're legal, Bill. We can drink. Oh.
Oh, I should have got something.
Kyle
A big
Kyle
old
could have
glass of
done
water
that
here.
2 episodes ago.
Oh man.
Yep.
So obviously
Three.
I'm Josh at Real Fantasy TL. I'm with my main man, Bill at Super Duper Flex. Bill, how you doing?
Good. Excited to start talking some football. It's just been a crazy week, so need to talk about some rookie running backs, I think.
I
Yeah.
think so too. I mean, obviously everybody's going through some of the same stuff here. I'm growing out my quarantine beard. Probably won't shave until it's all over. So who knows? I might look like Big Ben by the time this is all over. But we're all. This is going to be a good episode to just bring our mind away from all that craziness for a little bit. Obviously, if you guys are watching us on YouTube, you see a very attractive man here. We got Kyle Martins. Kyle, why
Oh,
don't
you're talking
you?
about me?
Oh
I
yeah, I'm
thought you were talking about Bill.
Well, I mean, I always call Bill attractive, and everyone knows I'm definitely not talking about my ugly face. So you're the only man left. But Kyle, why don't you quick introduce yourself and let the people know who you are?
Just a real budding, starting off kind of fantasy analyst from Canada. Hopped on D101 team a couple years ago, right before, I think after the first edition of the Rookie Digest. So got in there for version 2. Just been scouting running backs with that. This will be the second year up now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Twitter handle.
Oh, I should have put that in the name.
You can just shout it out.
Kyle W. Martins.
So, Kyle, I'm going to show my ignorance here right now. I actually did not know you were from the great country of Canada. So, as much as we try to pull away from everything that's going on in the world, we talk about it a little bit. How are things up there? What part of Canada are you from?
I'm from Winnipeg, right smack dab in the middle, basically
Okay.
North Dakota.
Okay.
Yeah.
Driven through that state once or twice.
Yeah.
How are things
about
up
enough
there?
for anybody? Well, they're a lot better than what you guys are going through down there.
Okay.
It's still picking up and it's getting worse and it's still concerning, but the numbers are a lot more positive up here.
Cool.
I don't know what the reason for that is. Probably just
Population density.
minuscule population. Yeah, like it's just a way lower number in total.
Right. Well, cool. And obviously, Bill and I talked, and he said, I want to get Kyle on, and I was like, dude, that's great because it is rookie season. Everyone is trying to figure out what they're going to do in their drafts. People have been hoarding 2020 picks since probably 2018. So obviously, this is a star-studded running back class. But we're going to go into some of the well-known names and maybe some of the not so well-known names by the time we're done with this. But before we get into all that fun stuff, we're going to start with the news. And not a lot of news this week, but there was a big thing that happened in the NFL. Owners approved expanding the postseason to 14 teams. Do you guys think that this is going to affect fantasy in any way? Bill, I'll let you go first.
It could. I mean, it's probably not a lot. I think what we might see is that there might be a couple more players that get, maybe they don't play them towards the end of the season just because they're going to rest them for the playoffs. Kind of like what we see now when teams have already clinched a spot. So you're just losing one more potential player, something like that. But other than that, I don't really see anything like materially different from previous years.
What about you, Kyle?
Yeah, and there was no talk of having like a limited number of games per player. I saw somebody bring that up when the 18 game schedule was discussed. Maybe each player would have to take a game off or something, but to be clear, that's not in effect at all.
Right.
Yeah, that would be awful.
That's the big one that I was worried about, because then all of a sudden you're getting this random buy from one of your best players when you're not expecting it, and maybe you need that win or you need that specific hole in your roster now is just unfillable.
Right.
But for this one, yeah, it's just maybe you might see a little bit less benched players in what I guess would be week 18 now.
Well, this would be
which isn't going to affect, because most fantasy leagues still probably aren't going to play in the last week.
Right.
I think maybe on rare occasion you'll see in that second last week those really elite teams, they sometimes bench their guys in the second half. That should be pretty near all and done with, unless some team has a 3-game lead on the bye or something.
Did they say if they were going to do 2 bye weeks, or are they not doing 2 bye weeks?
Well, since the 18-game schedule isn't starting to 2021, I don't know if anyone has talked about that.
Well, it's a 17 game, right? It's
right, 17 games,
the
18 week schedule, I should say.
Okay, so it is 18 weeks, which just mean that it's 1 bye.
1 bye.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I actually think this may have a positive effect on fantasy, just because there are more teams trying to get in, and now that the 2 seed isn't an automatic bye anymore, you may have the top 2 teams having to play those last couple of weeks, where maybe if they had a big enough lead, they wouldn't have to, because they're trying to avoid being the 2 seed and playing that extra game. I actually think it might have a positive effect. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be weird with 14 teams in, a lot more fighting, especially on the bottom. And cool, interesting stat, and I don't know if you guys heard this, people are worried about below 500 teams making it in with the additional wildcard spot.
Mm-hmm.
Since 1990, there would have only been 1 team with a below 500 record to make it into the playoffs under these new rules. And it actually would have been the 1990 Dallas Cowboys at 7-9. So it doesn't look
good.
Like
then I'm glad they didn't have it back then.
Yeah. So hey, listen, I almost put in the news that the Lions signed Geronimo Allison as the big move of the week, but I didn't want to get you all excited about your Lions, and then
I was going to cut him off a couple teams, but
him and Danny Amendola can fight for Lion supremacy.
Oh, I'll take Amendola in that battle.
Yeah.
Cool. So we blew through the news because honestly, there wasn't a lot that went on this week.
Because the news blew.
The news blew. That's right. So we're going straight to what we saw on the timeline. And Kyle, like I said earlier, I'm glad you're here because, we reached out from the show Twitter account and had people ask their questions about rookie running backs. And we got a lot of good questions. And since you've scouted a lot of them, and as we were saying before we got on, you are pretty much done. We know you have the information. So this first question is from 100% not Eric Verone at fake Eric Verone. I don't know who the real Eric Verone is, but I'd love to meet him.
Sounds
the
like a big
top
deal.
guys all seem great, but what about the next tier guys that don't get as much hype? And he lists Dylan, Moss, P. Ryan, Vaughn, McFarland, etc. Are they all landing spot dependent, or are the second and third tier wide receivers better this year than that group of running backs? So, Kyle, talk about maybe some of the running backs that aren't getting as much publicity that you like.
As much publicity, yeah. The ones that I'm actually higher on than most are a little bit further down in a lot of people's ranks are James Robinson and Darrington Evans. Now, they're not like top 10, top 8 guys in my list, but I've got Darrington Evans at 11, and I know he's part of that next question, so we'll just get on it early because this is the guy I was going to bring into the conversation.
Sweet. So,
That second tier of group that's like the Vaughn, Moss, Dillon,
mhm.
they're all good prospects to me. I like taking, I mean, if I can get any of those in the second round, I'm real happy with it. And it's the bigger three of those guys that I'm a little bit more worried about their landing spots.
Mhm.
What I've seen with AJ Dillon is if you give him some lane and like maybe 2 seconds or something like to get going, that dude's damn hard to bring down. But I've seen that if he gets like any sort of penetration, he's really not breaking any tackles early on in the down, and he goes down on first contact a lot earlier if he hasn't built up his momentum, which is kind of the nature of being a 250-pound back, I would assume.
So he's a guy you would maybe like a little bit more if he landed in a spot that had a pretty elite offensive line.
Yeah, if some spot opens up where he's going to actually jump into some carries early on that has a solidified line already, then I'm really excited about it, and I'm pushing him probably real high round 2.
Okay.
And we'll see where it goes. It might even borderline like 112, like right in the back there.
Cool. So, out of that group, that out of Dillon, Moss, P. Ryan, Vaughn, and McFarland, which one do you like the best?
I have Vaughn at the highest, and I've got him at 6 right now, just after the big 4 and Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Okay.
As I think he's more versatile than the other guys, a little bit more reliable in the passing game. Really strong player. He's a little smaller than those dudes, but he's just got a little bit more agility, and his vision, I think, is a little bit higher level. So I think the scheme probably won't be as much of a problem for him.
Sweet.
And that tenacity that he plays with is kind of going to win over any of those old school coaches if he gets drafted to one of those run heavy situations. The dude has no quit.
Nice.
Where do you have him right now? Like, where would you draft him at the moment?
If I can get
Without-
Keyshawn Vaughn, even at the end of the first round, I'm going to do it after probably about 4 receivers. I think those guys, I'm a big fan of drafting running backs early, which probably makes sense.
Sure.
I look at them all the time. But after the big 4, then I'm hopping on CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Reagor. And then right after that is when I start looking at Clyde, and then Vaughn shortly right after that.
Okay. So
like,
you
I'm
would
not
say
grabbing him
he's
mid-round,
actually close to Clyde then?
Yeah, I got him
Okay.
right behind, and then maybe a receiver or 2 might sneak in between those 2 once we see what happens in the draft.
Sure.
Nice. So, as you were saying, Kyle, we'll actually skip one question. We'll come back to it, but we'll go to the next thing on the show sheet. This is from Dane Brugler at DP Brugler. At one of the best people to follow when it comes to anything draft related. Really smart guy. I've been following him for years, and he's a good dude. So he says Darrington Evans and Antonio Gibson are 2 names that are mentioned quite often when talking to teams about intriguing running back prospects. Like Daniel Jeremiah said, speed plus versatility is the key. So, Kyle, we got some of your thoughts on Evans, but if you want to expand your thoughts on Evans and then talk about Gibson, what do you think about these 2 guys, and maybe even give us a couple of teams that you might like to see him drafted to?
And actually, did you even look at Gibson? Because wasn't he treated as a wide receiver?
Me and Devin just changed him over a couple days ago. So
Okay.
in the last 2 days, I've taken a lot closer look
Okay.
at him. I'm glad we switched over. And no, he's a real fun prospect to look at.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go on. Yeah, Darrington Evans first. Yeah. A little smaller than you'd like to see some of the backs, but this dude's got top tier speed. I think he ran a 4.45, which is plenty. A lot of fans are going to look at that, and you see a speedster, you think in 4.3s, but at that point, the 0.5 or 0.05 of a second ain't going to make a difference.
Right.
He's got, like, he can break past damn near any linebacker in the league and a whole bunch of defensive backs, and he just showed that he was able to produce with a decent workload at App State, and I like that a lot. Because a lot of these speed guys that come in, you see them 60 carries, 80 carries, but they have phenomenal efficiency. But he actually showed that he could have this kind of workload and actually continue to be efficient amongst that. And then Antonio Gibson is just the example of what I spoke of before, except he's 6'2" and 220, not 5'9" and 180. Just extreme versatility on the Gibson side. He had about 80 touches, I think, this year and went over 1,000 yards, which is just phenomenal. Yards per reception was 19, which is great even for a wide receiver, let alone a running back. But a lot of those snaps he was running out of the slot. So, I mean, the versatility is right there on tape. You don't even have to see it from the backfield. And then he had 33 carries, I believe, and averaged 11.2 yards per carry, which is absolutely disgusting.
So he wasn't he at Memphis?
Yeah, Memphis.
Doesn't that make you? So how does he compare to Pollard? Because they both kind of played a similar type of game, right? They were both kind of a slot guy. What's that?
Pretty much the same role.
Yeah.
Straight up.
But how do you compare them as prospects?
I've got them pretty much on same par in terms of skill set, except you've seen that Gibson now has the superior speed, and he's a lot bigger. Like he's, I think, 2 inches taller and maybe 12 pounds heavier. Like he's just a bigger player.
Okay. That's exciting.
Yeah.
So
really exciting player.
So if you can kind of think off the top of your head, maybe what teams, just one or two teams you'd like to see those guys drafted to if you had your way.
For Evans, I mean, he might be a nice little combination in Indy. I'm a Colts fan, so I'm a little bit closer to the situation.
Gotcha.
But Nyheim Hines is a nice little speed back like that, but he doesn't quite have the size of these other two.
Okay.
And, I just think the Colts might be able to actually take advantage of that, having a new old quarterback sign there with Phillip Rivers. You might be a little bit more dependent on the running backs and their pass catching ability this year. I mean, that's one, I'd say Green Bay always seems like they're not ready to commit to Jones. So, I mean, if one of them wants to fall there, I wouldn't complain at all.
Okay. Nice little stash pick.
Yeah.
If he went there.
I don't see either of them gaining any big role, though, right away. Like, they're not going to be drafted as feature guys, but I think they're going to be those crazy upside plays that you have as, like, the 40% guy in a committee.
Where would you be looking to draft those guys in your rookie drafts?
Darrington Evans, like I have him ranked up pretty high. I have him as number 11. Right. So in my little early projection there, it's like kind of mid-round 3 as far as running backs go.
Okay.
So, I mean, as soon as it gets to round 3, I'll probably pull the trigger on him. But it might not be so much. Once we see the landing spot, we'll obviously know more whether people are going to be high on him or not. First 2 days after the draft, we'll see what his stock's like on Twitter and
So I've heard projections that he gets drafted late second, early third in the NFL draft. So if that happens, I mean,
that shoots him way up. I'm not getting him in the third round. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
If he gets into that day 2 range, it's going to be late round 2 for him. Early round 3 is going to be very
out the window, huh?
Yeah.
Cool. So we'll jump back up to the question before this on our show sheet. This is from Corey Rosieneck. Sorry if I mispronounced that, Corey. At BR_Rosieneck. Can McFarland succeed? If so, how and what type of system?
Yeah, if he's going to succeed, it's got to be a committee. This isn't the kind of guy I don't think that's going to lead any backfield. He's a really nice splash play as like a change of pace guy. So if you have a team that has one of those Devin Singletary type players that's not quite ready to take on a full workload, it could be a really nice second piece because defenses are going to get beat up by some other guy, and then he hops in and runs for 60 yards on one play, which he can very well do.
So is he like a poor man's like Justice Hill kind of thing, like that type of player?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, if we would have seen a little bit more from Justice Hill, that would have been a promising comparison.
Sure.
But yeah.
And I just realized, I read the question and I realized I didn't do this. This is my fault. We're talking about Anthony McFarland from Maryland, just in case people are listening and like, who's this guy McFarland? Because
Booger.
Yeah.
I mean, some people are real into this. I mean, obviously, you two guys are. You guys are scouting and putting things together for a Rookie Digest.
Yes.
I get into it, but you know, once we start getting to guys like Anthony McFarland, I will never pretend to have answers or be able to give people legitimate sound advice, which is why luckily we got, you know, Bill on the show every week, but we bring people like you on, Kyle, because you guys have the information. I'm just here to try to keep this moving. So, but cool. So you would like McFarland as part of a committee. Is there a type of system that you think he would fit best in, or is it just kind of drop him into a committee? And
Yeah, I mean, any of those ones that they give you that little lateral start and then you hit 1 foot in the ground and go upfield, that's going to be his best scenario. Like he's not incredibly elusive.
Mhm.
It's functional enough because he's a smaller back and he's got good enough agility, but it's not like the staple of his game, like a Devin Singletary. He's just hopping all over the place. This is a
right.
see a gap, get upfield real quick kind of guy.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. I mean, something like the way that the 49ers run it. And I'm not saying I want him to go there because he's not going to see the field, but yeah.
I don't know if that's true, though. It seems like the 49ers seem to put 4 or 5 running backs on the field every season. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's just
fair.
not going to see a lot of the field. He'll see it, but he's just not
That's-
going to
yeah,
see.
yeah. If he has
listen,
3 touches
we
for
could've-
30 yards.
we could have said that about Raheem Mostert last year, and he ended up being a late season star. So in San
True.
Francisco, I never put it, literally. I could try to draft every running back that has San Francisco after their name in a startup draft, because I'll have, you know, a running back 1 throughout the season. It might just be, you know, at different points 3 different guys. So but cool that you know, I'm listening right now kind of as much as everyone else who's listening to the pod and who's watching us on YouTube, because once we get really in depth, I mean, I have been looking at guys like Darrington Evans and stuff like that, but you know, we talk about McFarland and P. Ryan and stuff like that. Like I said earlier, I'm not even going to sit here and try to trick people into thinking that I have enough information to make any kind of sense what their abilities are and where they would be a good fit. But this next question is from Superflex Junkie at Superflex Junkie. He said, while Taylor seems to be getting the nod over Swift in most rookie mocks I've been doing, I'm wondering how far back Dobbins is behind Taylor and Swift. I personally question whether Dobbins, wow, let's try that again, whether Dobbins may be much closer than anyone is really recognizing. So, Bill, why don't we'll throw this to you first. Obviously, it seems that Taylor is the RB1 going into rookie mocks. Swift is behind him. Some people will argue it the other way around, but from mostly what I've been seeing, Taylor's RB1. But in your opinion, what do you think about Dobbins? Is he closer than most people are giving him credit for? Or are those two guys kind of in their own tier and then everyone else comes afterwards?
So, okay, first and foremost, I've been spending my life looking at quarterbacks. So, like, let's give me some, a little bit of leeway here. Kyle is the running back guy, but from what I've seen of him, I feel like he's a good running back. I don't feel like he's a great running back. So, like, I feel he's good at a lot of things, but I don't think he's great at a lot of things. So I don't think he's necessarily at the same level as the other two. But I mean, that's just from me. I'm in Big Ten country, so I see, a fair amount of Ohio State games. And so, I mean, that's kind of where I'm coming from. Beyond that, I don't have a whole lot. I defer to the people who have spent the time looking at these guys, or people smarter than me. So, that's kind of my feel for it. And I'm in a best ball draft right now, and just based on like that, I mean, Swift and Taylor went very close to each other, and then there was like a pretty big gap before Dobbins went. So, I mean, from at least from my practical experience and my, uneducated eyes, I lean towards those two are pretty far ahead of him.
All right, Kyle, we'll let you, now that I've put Bill on the spot, we'll let you you come in with the information. So
Correct me.
Is it Taylor and Swift and then kind of a big gap in everyone else, or is Dobbins kind of in that area?
See, I might be even a little bit more contrarian here. I've got Taylor and then the big gap. And then I've got this tier of Swift, Akers, and Dobbins all together.
Okay.
So the gap from Swift to Dobbins and Akers is still pretty sizable, but I'd still consider them in the same tier of player. Like, it's not this crazy drop off for me. I've actually got Akers ahead of Dobbins too.
Okay.
The numbers aren't crazy, right? You're playing behind this dirt offensive line in Florida State, but dude shook a tackle every play nearly. It looked like it was Devin Singletary's FAU tape and how electric that looked, but then you add 20 pounds and a couple inches in height with a little bit more speed. That's what you're looking at with Akers. And then Dobbins is just probably one of the more complete all-around backs in this class. When I was scouting him, I would coming up with things to put on the negative list in our digest was tough for me. I got real nitpicky, like he's not an extremely reliable pass blocker, but this dude's going to be running routes every time he's on the backfield anyway, so it's not like he's going to have to be standing up to blitzers too much.
So
who do you comp him to?
Dobbins?
Yeah.
Jeez, hold on. I got to give up my list here.
Yeah, take your time.
Come back to me. I'll look at it.
In the meantime, I just want everybody to know that Kyle and I write for Rookie Digest from Dynasty 101, and it's for sale right now for $8. We'll put a link up in the pod and in the YouTube if you want to buy that. We're going to be giving away some copies of it. So if you go to iTunes and rate and review us, and then send Josh, myself, or the podcast Twitter a DM with the screenshot of your review, we'll put you in a drawing and we'll give away 3 copies, and we will announce that in a couple weeks when we have another member of the Rookie Digest as a guest.
And just because we know everyone doesn't use Apple Podcasts as their podcast directory of sorts, if you don't use it and you can't rate and review on the one you use, like Bill said, just shoot either one of us or the show Twitter handle just a quick, hey, I listened to this, it was really cool, thanks a lot, whatever. And we'll also throw that into Enter so that we don't leave out any of our non-Apple podcast listening parties. So Kyle, before, I know you were looking it up, but before we get back to that, I had one quick question. If I'm understanding you correctly, do you have Cam Akers as your running back 3 in this class?
I do.
I knew I really like Kyle for some reason, because people that I've said that to, by the way, I also have him personally as my running back 3, and I've been laughed at by a lot of people because,
is that why?
Well, but besides like the beard and all that other stuff, but a lot of people bring up guys like Dobbins and Edwards-Helaire and they're like, but I go, Cam Akers did everything that he did literally behind an offensive line, and I saw this stat and I almost fell over when I saw it. His yards before contact last year was -2 yards. Like, think about that. -2 yards. That means that he literally was starting a lot of plays getting hit behind the line of scrimmage and still did what he did. So, I mean, anyone who can do that at that level, I have to believe even behind a okay NFL offensive line will be able to at least replicate what he did in college. But go ahead, Kyle. We had you looking stuff up, and I went and interrupted.
No, it's all good. I appreciate that. Then it's not just dead air while I'm looking through my phone. No, that's the best point you can make, right? Is this dude's putting up great numbers behind a terrible O-line. And these other three running backs in the top tier, they're all putting up great numbers too, but they're playing on some of the best offenses around. So I have Akers 3, and his Akers comp for me is Ryan Matthews, which might not stick out in anyone's brain.
But that's a really good one,
career.
actually. He was hyped.
But yeah, as a prospect, that's something you want to see. And then my comp for J.K. Dobbins is Duke Johnson. So if that doesn't scream versatility, then I don't know really what else I can do to convince you of it.
Yeah, man.
So I'd say that J.K. Dobbins has a safer floor, and so he's probably going to be a more reliable player, like long term. And it's just his percentage of success, I think, would be a little higher. But Akers might be the best ceiling play outside of Jonathan Taylor in the whole draft.
So I have a question because I was talking to someone in one of my leagues about this, and this class, the top 5 are really good, and everyone has their favorites, and they have them ranked kind of differently. But if J.K. Dobbins had come out last year, would he have been the RB1 in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, if I had known what I'd known this year, he would be. But actually, after last year, I think he might not have been.
Okay.
Because he just had a really down year in his sophomore season, and that's actually one of the negatives I was struggling to come up with, was the efficiency during his sophomore season was just bad. Like, that offense wasn't bad by any means. That was Dwayne Haskins year, right?
Yes.
So they had some moving pieces in there, but his yards per carry dropped from his freshman year to that sophomore year by over 2.5 yards.
Wow.
And so yards per carry isn't this great indicative stat, but when it's that significant of a number, you can see that something's clearly wrong.
Exactly. Okay.
So, having only seen him in his sophomore year, I probably would have still had – I had Miles Sanders 1, which might not even be everyone's perspective, but I would have probably still had Miles Sanders slightly higher, but they would have been 1A, 1B. Like, it would have been a close deal. And then landing spot could have flip-flopped that anyway. So,
wow, so you would have him over Jacobs.
Would I have him over Jacobs? Yeah, I would have had him. I actually wasn't a big fan of Jacobs, but I had Jacobs ranked number 2 because it was such a dirt class. Like, the next guy was David Montgomery. So that's who I'm thinking is the third guy. Yeah. No, I just didn't like him either.
Don't worry, a lot of people have forgotten.
That's how we had to rank it.
Don't worry, a lot of people have forgotten about David Montgomery after what he did this year, so it's not just you. No, and the conversation I was having with one of the guys in my league is he couldn't understand why Jonathan Taylor and Zeke Elliott posted very similar combine stats, and he couldn't understand why Zeke went 4 in the draft, and people are talking about Taylor going, back half of the first round, maybe even top few picks of the second round. And I said, well, draft class talent is just completely different. I mean, it was Zeke Elliott and that's it. I mean, there were other guys that were being talked about, but Zeke Elliott was on he was on another planet compared to everyone else that was coming out at the position. And this year you have, 5 guys that people are really excited about, 5 guys that are probably going to go in the first 50 picks, probably. So, it's completely different than a guy who's just kind of standing alone because teams realize, well, if I don't take him with my first round pick, I can turn around and get him with a second round pick. And that just, when there's so much of that depth, especially at the top, people are more willing to kind of let it slide a little bit because they can pick up other positions that have less depth and then go and still get a guy that they really like. So that's why I was curious about how you would rank Dobbins in last year's class, because I also liked Miles Sanders a lot, even though I knew Josh Jacobs was going to go first, just because, I mean, everyone knew he was going to go first in the NFL draft. I was actually not a huge fan of Josh Jacobs coming out. A lot of people were. I felt like I was in a small minority in not liking Josh Jacobs coming out. I hated Miles Sanders' landing spot. And he got kind of lucky last year because a few guys went down and he kind of was by himself or in a slight timeshare with Boston Scott. But I just thought if all those guys had stayed healthy, I mean, we probably wouldn't be talking about Miles Sanders the way we are right now. So, but I mean, I believed in the talent. It was just the landing spot really kind of was like.
And I mean, that's a concern you're going to have even this year. I mean, it's just how they use their running backs. It's kind of like San Fran a little bit. It's kind of like New England, where they're just going to keep plugging those guys in, keep everybody fresh. And, I mean, I don't think we're going to see Sanders do what he did at the end of last year this year. Because I don't think he's going to get the volume that he got at that point. But, I mean, maybe that extends his career, maybe it, he's more efficient, who knows? But, Kyle, where would you have Edwards-Helaire compared to last year?
He'd probably be close to there, actually, because I like that tier that he's just below, but I'd probably have him right behind Jacobs, right in front of David Montgomery.
Okay. How about, where'd you have Singletary? Do you remember?
Way down.
Yeah.
A little bit too far, actually.
I mean, hey, we get them all. We all get them wrong.
Process
nobody more than me.
Maybe could have adjusted a little bit. Yeah, no, I had him real. After that combine, I just jumped off the ship completely. Early in the process, I really liked him when all we could see was the tape.
Do you feel that you overweighted the combine?
I'm not even that. I think just specifically his 40, I was just like, if this dude's outrunning players in whatever Conference USA or whatever he's in, he's not going to be running this speed downfield in the NFL, which apparently didn't matter because this dude was consistently getting 5 yards. So, I mean,
yeah, he's really elusive, right? His vision's incredible. Like, that's his big gift, right? Just his vision.
Well, yeah, and that small frame allows him to get through any gap that ever exists on the field.
So we're chatting about Singletary, so I'll bring up a burning Twitter debate that I see all over the place. It seems like half of Twitter thinks that Devin Singletary is going to be the guy for the Bills, and they're not going to either draft anyone or sign anyone in free agency of any note. And half of Twitter thinks that they're going to have to bring in somebody with sort of a name to at least have a running back by committee in Buffalo. So what's your opinion, Kyle? And then if Buffalo does draft somebody, who do you think would be somebody from this class that would be a good complement to Devin Singletary?
Yeah, I'm definitely on board with Buffalo grabbing another guy to kind of fill that third down role. I'm not convinced of Devin Singletary's pass catching acumen, and there's a lot of guys in this class that could really fill that role. Singletary's a really weird case for me because all of his play style shows that he's a first and second down back, and then you see his measurables and his body type, and you think this guy could only be viable on third down, but that's just not the case. Two guys that I think would fit pretty well there are the ones that we've already talked about, in Darrington Evans and Anthony McFarland. McFarland might be slightly redundant, but he's just a little bit more of that player to stretch the defense where vertically, where Singletary's getting them going horizontally and jumping around all over the place. McFarland's just a nice, more direct player that I think would complement him well.
I tell you what, if Evans goes to Buffalo, I'm gonna try to buy every share of that I possibly can. That would be a spot that I would love.
Yeah, Because if he goes there too, you know that there's going to be people saying, "Oh, he's not going to get anything because this is the rise of Singletary," and then all of a sudden his price drops, and
Yep.
halfway through the year you got this crazy explosive player, and he's getting more touches than anyone thought he would.
I mean, kind of almost repeating what Singletary did last year, where he didn't start off as the guy. You know, they had 98-year-old Frank Gore, and they had signed T.J. Yeldon, and Shady was still there for a little bit until they cut him, and people just thought that was going to kind of be a year for Singletary to sit on a bench, maybe get some carries here and there, but not really be a factor. And he kind of, got on the field, improved himself, and ended up being the number one guy there. So yeah, really interesting. And I saw Bill shaking his head. He in agreement. I'm also in agreement. I don't think that Buffalo can just survive with Devin Singletary being the guy with a couple of lesser running backs just scooping up an occasional carry here and there. I think they need someone to complement him if they want to be successful. And I mean, I know they traded for Diggs, but that team is still built on, playing good defense and running the ball and trying to have Josh Allen throw as little as possible. So I think, I also think they're going to bring another guy in.
Yeah, they have to. They're like right now they just have him and TJ Yeldon, and then like a couple guys that are like special teamers, and that's it. So like, I mean, they have to draft somebody. Where they draft him, I mean, who knows? But I mean, you can't go into the into the season with only two guys that you consider contributors.
Right. And Kyle, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the depth of this year's running back class, there are going to be a couple of guys getting drafted in round 4 that you're going to look at and go, these are pretty good players that are getting taken in the 4th round and could contribute depending on landing spot.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I have my running back rankings in front of me here, and it's got a little bit tiered off on each side. On one side, I've got where I think they're projected to go in a rookie rank. On the other side, it's where they're going to go in the NFL. And just my early scribbles have Gibson, Benjamin, Darrington Evans, and Josh Kelly going in the 4th round of the NFL draft. And those are all players that could really make an impact if they're given any opportunity early on.
Yeah, and it's crazy that you mentioned Eno Benjamin. It's crazy that we're now mentioning him as a 4th round pick, because I feel like when the season started, there was some slight buzz about him possibly being a 1st round pick, but I think most of the community agreed that he would probably be drafted in that 2nd round. And now, like you said, we're talking about him as a 4th round pick. And I listen, crazy things happen in the NFL draft every year, but I don't think you're really that far off with him going in the 4th. I think that, he may be able to sneak in at the very end of day 2 in that round 3 range. But I mean, I also think it's just as likely that he could slip to the 5th round, depending on what happens. So it's, obviously the top 5 guys are pretty damn good. And in a lot of years, they would probably be RB1s themselves. But, we've mentioned guys like Dillon and Moss and Benjamin and Evans. These are guys that can definitely contribute at that level.
What's your thoughts on Moss?
I actually like Moss. He's kind of one of the most polarizing players in this class. I think some people are super high on him because they just love his ability to break tackles and burst through with his giant frame and his, pretty nimble feet for a big guy. And then others are just super low on him because how could a big, slow player that only breaks tackles physically ever succeed ever? But I've got him right after Vaughn and right before AJ Dillon, so he's at running back 7 for me. But when I watched him, I was surprised at how he was actually able to get through gaps. And he's not specifically just like a runway back that needs time to get up to speed, but he's surprisingly nimble for a big dude. I'm not saying it's elite or anything, but it's just enough to get him through some of those gaps that I think he'll be able to succeed in the NFL. And then his elusiveness I'd say it's above average. It's nothing special, anything other than physical tackle breaking, but he's just like one of those big frames that defenders have to gear up to tackle him. So that allows him to shake a little easier because it gets defenders a little more off balance because they're more focused on the big hit than actually just wrapping up a small guy.
So since you have your notes out in front of you, who was your Zach Moss comp?
Ooh, how to get down to that one too.
I'm always just curious about these things. I mean, I love hearing comps.
Everybody loves the comps, man.
It's just interesting. A lot of people don't know this about me. My undergrad is in psychology, so I like the mental aspect of the way people come up with comps more than the actual comps itself, because I try to then get into people's heads and see how they got from the player to the comp. So that's why I'm interested in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most of my comps are athleticism driven at first, and then I see if the production matches or is at least similar. And then if I can't find a match for either of those, I'll just go by off the top of my head what they kind of seem like style-wise.
Right.
And this was one of those weird ones where you're getting a big guy that runs slow but is actually really productive and is somehow efficient in college. But like style of play, the first thing that comes to mind is Chris Carson with a little less speed.
Right.
It's the same kind of guy, right? He can go around you if he has to, but more often than not, he's going to want to go right through you or over you.
Yeah, I actually really like that comp. I don't know if it's a comp I've ever heard before, but again, like trying to get into your head and trying to get from point A to point B, I totally see how you got there. So It's pretty cool. And I honestly don't think it's a comp I've heard before. So that's why, Bill knows I'm a comp slut, but I like the comps and
So yeah, comps are fun to do, but it's just a lot of people get hung up on it super early.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I got to explain what my comps are for each person and why I have this player comped. And
yeah, I have a comp for like the best quarterback I've ever seen. Like that when I comped him to Ryan Tannehill. So, I mean, like, how do you do that? You know what I mean? And like, how did I get to Ryan Tannehill from Joe Burrow? Like, it's just, he's a more accurate Ryan Tannehill, just the style of play and just how he beats teams, but his just precision's just so much greater than Tannehill's. And there's nobody I could come up with to compare him to. Like, I even like went researching for comps are so dumb. Like, because there's just there's no way you can get them right. It's just people love them, but it's like, and what you say, what you're comping them to is what they look like coming out of college, or based on their college. So it's not based on necessarily how they're gonna do in the NFL. Like I have guys that I comp to, Daniel Jones, or I've had and that are good quarterbacks, and I have other guys that I comp to, I comped Burrow to Ryan Tannehill. And it's just like, God, it's like just disgusting to even say that. But it is what it is. And, people are just going to be like, how the hell did you do that? And I'm not going to get into it. But like, I mean, that's just what he looks like to me. So.
Well, and the problem is, too, is that, you said, Joe Burrow, your comp is Ryan Tannehill. And people hear that or they see that, and they automatically think that you're saying that Joe Burrow is going to have Ryan Tannehill's career.
Exactly.
Which is not what you're saying.
Well, right. And then I comped Tua to Breeze, but I have Burrow ranked above Tua. And so how can I have Tannehill ranked higher than Breeze?
Right. And
you know what I mean? And so, it's fun. It's a fun conversation point. But it's just, That's what it is. And actually, that's kind of what they tell us when we do these. Is just like you got to put them in there because people love them. But
Yeah.
And actually, I want to start promoting that comp just to see people's heads blow up because
it's gonna blow up.
My favorite comp that I've seen so far, and I've seen a lot of people make this comp out of this year's rookie class, is Henry Ruggs to Deshaun Jackson. And people literally lose their mind. It's like you've insulted one of their family members. And I go, first of all, I don't agree with the comp.
People just get emotional over the wrong things.
And I get the comp. Both dudes are really fast. Like, okay, like it should go deeper than that, but I know why the comp is what it is. But I see people on Twitter who are like, you're an idiot and you should never watch football again. And I'm like, the guy just made a comp. Like, he's not saying the guy is Deshaun Jackson. He's not saying he's going to have a decade-long career that Deshaun Jackson has had so far. Like, he's not saying any of these things. He's just saying that at this time, when both players were coming into the draft, he feels like, Henry Ruggs looks like Deshaun Jackson. And by the way, I don't agree with that comp, but it's just, I'm just one of those people that'll be like, I don't really agree with that. And, here are the reasons why.
Yeah, you move on.
And like, people are really losing it. I mean, I probably will say it at some point just for the hate because I
already did.
I love causing chaos. I'll use that one. I'll use Burrow.
You're going to tag me in it?
Yeah, and then I'll immediately follow that up with Henry Ruggs. I won't even say comps to Deshaun Jackson. I will just say Henry Ruggs is Deshaun Jackson, and just watch Twitter blow up because, yeah, I like comps for a totally different reason than most people do. But, I mean, people really they will fight you over a comp. And it's funny because you guys in the digest do a lot of detailed work, and they'll read a comp and you could write a 3,000 word essay on the guy, his pros, his cons, his best games, his worst games. And they will read that 2-word comp, whoever that player's name is, and it negates all of the film you guys watched. And I know sometimes you guys will watch film on a prospect and then watch film on someone else who may be in the NFL or maybe who was another prospect that kind of looks similar to that player, athletically, stylistically, to compare just to make sure you guys aren't going wrong. None of that matters. You guys, like you said, you just comped Moss to Carson. If someone thinks you're wrong about that, it does not matter how much film you've watched. It doesn't matter how many words you've written about him. You're just going to hear Moss is Carson. I can't believe it. It's like, I sit back and I just laugh because it's one of those things where the comp literally will overtake all the other work that you guys have done.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that the NFL in their draft reviews have cut down on the amount of comps they provide, and so I think there might be a reason for that.
They might be a little bit smarter than some of the other people out there. But Kyle, while we got you, we have one more question. This was a real interesting one. I wanted to run it by you. So this is from Steven Snyder at Steven XX Snyder. Where are Swift and Taylor in comparison to Barkley, Dalvin Cook, and Alvin Kamara? He's got the 101 and the 102, and he's wondering if it would be wise to bolster his running backs or trade away picks for the other players. So I followed this up because obviously this is going to change the answer. I asked him if this was a 1 QB league or a super flex. So he told me it was a super flex, and his quarterbacks are Lamar Jackson, Phillip Rivers, Cam Newton, Andy Dalton, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Andrew Luck, and Jacoby Brissett. So I didn't respond to him because I knew we were going to talk about it on the pod. Half of his quarterbacks currently don't have jobs or starting jobs. So, I mean, if I were him personally and I had 101 and 102, I'd probably do the Burrow Tua stack personally. But since that's not the question he asked, that's just my 2 cents. First of all, how do you rank the top 2 guys, Taylor and Swift, to Saquon, Dalvin Cook, and Alvin Kamara, and then we'll go into what he should do with those 2 picks.
Yeah, I've got him right after that group. So Swift will be a little bit further down, probably like a mid RB2, not knowing where he's going to be or if he's even played it down in the NFL.
Right.
And Taylor, I'll probably have right just at the back of RB1s, just on like this is one of the greatest prospects I've ever looked at. And some people are saying ever. So, I mean, I've got him high, but I'm not going to jump him ahead of any of those 3 guys yet because we know that they are all great running backs and they've all shown that they can succeed when given opportunities and actually played through a full season in the NFL. And so I'm not going to stick him in front of any of those 3 guys, but after 4 weeks in the NFL, that might change. Like
right.
Taylor could easily hop Kamara and even Cook, but I can't see myself putting him ahead of Saquon ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Saquon has every possible, like the perfect skill set, whereas like the other guys have injuries or they're, like Kamara is never going to be like a workhorse. So like, I mean, and Barkley just is a much better pass catcher than Taylor, in my opinion. So like, yeah, I mean, but yeah, so would you consider him kind of like a Chubb level at the moment? Is that kind of where you would?
Yeah, I'd probably be slotting him right in behind there. What would be after Chubb? Chubb's probably around
Mixon,
7, right, for most
Chubb's
people.
Mixon.
Oh, maybe 5 or 6, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd have him probably right after Mixon then.
Okay.
I haven't put him in with anybody else yet. I've been strictly doing amongst the members of his class, so this is all off the top of my head.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we're not going to hold you to this.
Change my mind in a week, it might be different.
Yeah.
I think things are always changing, not only in the NFL, but in fantasy. So
every day.
Trust me, there are a lot of things I said last month that now I would probably say, you know what, I got to change my mind on that. But, it's just the nature of the beast. You got to be fluid with everything that's going on. So you have Taylor right behind those guys. You think of him as a lower end RB1. Swift, is he a little bit further back from there?
Yeah, just on the gap, he'd be a little bit further back from me.
Okay.
Aaron Jones has got to be like right near the end of RB1.
Yeah, I think he's
like if you gave him to me right now, that would be probably where I have the hang up.
You guys talk, I'll look this up.
Yeah. Because he's kind of playing that Kamara role in Green Bay, right? He's not getting all the touches, but the ones he's getting, he's taking to the house and he's scoring a whole bunch of fantasy points, but we're not sure if that role holds up, if he'll be able to continue the efficiency. And
right. Like he they like to use 2 running backs, and that's the thing. The only reason he got as much volume as he did towards the end of the year was because Jamal Williams was out. So like, I mean, you could say he's the 60% back there.
So would you have Swift above Jones or behind him?
See, right now I'd have him behind, but if you give him any sort of landing spot where he might have a good work share right away, I'd put him probably right in front of Jones.
So since we don't know where Swift is gonna be yet, let's play a little game. I have Fantasy Pros Dynasty running back ranking. So currently, Aaron Jones is coming in at 11th at the running back position in their rankings. So number 12 is Leonard Fournette. Would you have Swift in front of him or behind him?
I think I'd still actually have Swift behind there. I thought Fournette would have been ahead of Jones, but apparently I'm wrong.
Austin Eckler is 13. Would you have Swift above or below Eckler?
I'd take Swift there above.
Yeah. Same.
I mean, that's still solid though, getting, a early round 2, RB2.
Yeah,
I mean,
for
I'd sign
sure.
up for that. I'll take that right now.
For sure. I mean, and then I'm just kind of looking at the guys behind him. Behind Eckler, Melvin Gordon, Kenyon Drake, Todd Gurley. Like, I'm taking Swift above all those guys. I don't think any
Yeah,
of
that's
us would.
just an age
Yeah.
thing alone.
So if man, sorry, Steven, I forgot your name for a minute. So
Kyle. Oh, Steven.
No, Steven who's asked the question. I know Kyle's name literally because it's written on the screen in front of me. So even if I forgot it, I could just look real quick and go, "Oh yeah, Kyle." But no, Steven's name is not right in front of me, so I forgot that for a minute. I have a newborn, so I'm working on like 4 hours of sleep the last 2 days. So you gotta have to forgive me on some of my forgetfulness here. But Steven said that he has the 101 and the 102 in this draft. So if he wanted to, and he was going to be bold, even though he said in the follow-up question that I asked him, he was looking at going with a QB running back combo with those 2 picks. If he was bold, I mean, he could be adding 2 possibly top 15 to 18 running backs to his already kind of star-studded lineup that he has with Saquon, Dalvin Cook, and Kamara. So that would be interesting. But Kyle, what would you do knowing what his quarterbacks look like, what his running backs look like? What would you do with the 101 and the 102?
See, when I read this question at first on the show sheet, now this is my fault because it's clearly the same thing, but I thought this was 2 separate questions, both having the same picks.
Right.
Yeah. And so now knowing that it's the same, I'd probably go double quarterback there.
Okay.
Just because, I mean, I have in my note here, 3 Colts is very concerning. And even the one that's starting is still not even that inspiring. So
might be the third best one.
Yeah. Probably at this point, because he doesn't offer the rushing upside that Brissett can get out with.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm probably going to grab the 2 quarterbacks there because that running back stable is set. My note on having them split was if I thought that it was just those 3 running backs and we didn't know what else was going on, I'd maybe grab Taylor there and then Joe. But that's because you're going to want to have those running backs to fill up your flex spot, and then you probably want to have at least one that's ready to go if you need something to fill in, right? Because if you have your starting lineup is set and you don't have anything on the bench, as soon as one of those guys goes down, which is nearly inevitable in fantasy, you're screwed, right? You don't have the lineup you thought you had. But yeah, knowing that it's the same team, I'd be picking the quarterbacks there. And that's only because he has Barkley and those running backs.
Yeah, he's pretty stacked, at least at the high end of his roster. I don't know what else he has behind those guys, but those are 3 really good guys to have. Bill, what would you do with the 101 and the 102?
101, I am taking my favorite quarterback. So whichever one that is.
Ryan Tannehill?
Yes, Ryan Tannehill.
Okay.
But the 102, I'm trading for a veteran quarterback. I don't want to go with 2 rookie quarterbacks to that team because that's a good team, and I want to make sure that I have a couple guys that I know are good. And you can get a really good quarterback with the 102, especially if somebody's in love with Taylor. So, I mean, that pick is going to be fantastic. You're going to be able to move him for probably a top 8 quarterback. So that's kind of the route I would go. Who was this big quarterback in that? What was this good one?
Lamar.
Oh, Lamar, yeah.
Lamar.
So you got Lamar, and then he had Rivers. That was his only other starting quarterback from what I recall.
And Fitzpatrick, if you want, depending on what happened.
So, yeah, I'm not really going to count him just because I'm not sure he's going to play the whole season. And I'm not even really sure that Rivers is. So, Yeah, I'd definitely be I'd be taking one rookie quarterback, and then I would trade for somebody that I know is going to be a starter. So yeah, I would probably make that move for something like somebody like Wentz or in that range. And then whatever you got to do to make it work. Because then you got a good young starting quarterback for the next 5, 6, 8 years.
So Bill, since you brought it up, let's play the game again. So, and Kyle, I want you to play along too. So, you guys are going to tell me if you want the 102 or the quarterback that I mentioned. So, 102 or Deshaun Watson.
Still want Watson, but
there's no question.
It really hurts now losing that receiver.
They're going to find somebody else.
Let's drop down then a little bit. 102 or Dak Prescott?
Oh, I want Dak.
All right, let's drop down a little bit more. 102 or Josh Allen?
I'm not a big Josh Allen guy.
Josh Allen there.
So Kyle's taking Josh Allen. Bill?
I'm not a Josh Allen guy, so I probably wouldn't make that trade specifically to him. But that doesn't mean that he's the cutoff, because there's probably guys behind him that I'd be willing to take over him.
Probably, because just to drop the knowledge again, this is according to Fantasy Pros. Deshaun Watson is QB3, Dak Prescott is QB6, and Josh Allen is QB8. Bill, 102 or Carson Wentz?
I'll take Wentz.
Okay, so Carson Wentz is 7 according to these ranks. And I think you're right. So we're going to go a little bit lower. I'm going to just throw some guys out. 102 or Baker Mayfield?
That's probably right in that range. Who's 10?
Baker Mayfield.
Oh, who's 9?
9 is Aaron Rodgers.
Ooh, no. I think Wentz is the cutoff for me then.
Yeah, because after that you have Matt Ryan, Jared Goff, Matt Stafford.
And if that wouldn't get me him, then I would be probably willing to even throw something in, but it doesn't have to be straight up. But I would much rather spend a little bit extra and get Wentz than get one of those guys behind him.
Well, I also think too, and I think this year we're going to see a lot more trading during the draft, just because. So I think you could even trade back. Let's just say you have 102. You could trade back to, let's just say 104, grab something else, and then trade 104 for, one of those QBs that you like.
Yeah, for example, I traded 107 for Daniel Jones in the league, and it's okay, maybe I trade 102 back, grab 106, 107, move that for a younger up and comer that maybe, but at least I know he's going to start. And, Daniel Jones, I think, is one of those guys that, he's a first-round pick. He's going to be starting for you for at least the next 4 years. And so probably 5 years, right? Because they have the options, or the 5th-year option. So it's 4 more years. Right. And so, even moving back, trading for a guy like that and getting something on top isn't a bad play. And actually probably the route I would prefer to go. Because, really, I wasn't a big Daniel Jones fan last year. My rankings, I think I had him 5th, but that was just because I knew that he was going to get drafted early. It didn't have anything to do with how I felt about his abilities.
Right.
And he's shown everybody he can play, and he has those games where he just blows up. So he's capable of doing that. And if he just cleans up the fumbles and the interceptions, I think he can be a long-term quarterback, and that's what you're shooting for in these dynasty. He may never have that upside, but he could be a QB1 for the next decade. Who knows?
Right. And I'm in a 14-team super flex league, and our rookie draft actually starts tomorrow. It's the only league that I draft in that the rookie draft starts before the NFL draft.
What site is it on?
MFL.
Please send me a link.
I will.
Okay.
The 101 was just traded today for 3 2021 firsts and a 2021 second. So
That's a lot for a player that hasn't played yet.
And
player that doesn't even have a team yet.
Yep.
Right. And that's kind of what I'm saying, especially in a situation that we were talking about where, would you trade 102 for a guy like Carson Wentz? You might not have to. You might be able to trade down to 104, pick up a 2021 first in the deal, and then trade that 104 for Wentz or, Baker Mayfield or something like that, a guy that maybe you have a little bit more confidence in, and still realize that, that quarterback, we'll just call him Carson Wentz for the sake of this conversation. Your first round pick is Carson Wentz, plus you have another 2021 first, going into next year. I mean, the guy who had the 101 this year now has at least 3 2021 firsts if he doesn't have his own. If he does, he has 4 2021 firsts. And, it sounds crazy when we talk about it, but, I wanted to bring up that deal just because since our rookie draft starts tomorrow, this is, kind of the final countdown for, big time trades to be made before people are actually on the clock. And I think as more and more rookie drafts start coming, a lot of them are after the actual NFL draft. We're going to be seeing big deals where people go, they're trading the 101 for the 103 and, a 2021 first, or the 103 and, insert, big name player here. And we're also going to see people take advantage of it, though. And you're going to see, you're probably going to see a trade. Someone trades 104 for Michael Thomas or DeAndre Hopkins, because once you're actually in there, once you're 24 hours away from being on the clock, or you're actually on the clock, you're probably going to be able to take advantage of certain owners who have been drooling over these picks since, like I said, in some cases 2018. And, if they don't have one, or if they feel like they need another one, they're going to be all about it. It's kind of what I'm hoping to do, actually, is take advantage of some of these, some of the drooling that's been going on, and get myself some good players. But I think that's all we got for today. Kyle, dude, it was great having you on. You dropped a lot of knowledge, educated me about some guys that honestly I had very little education about. Oh, Bill?
Kyle, give me like one deep sleeper.
Hold on, let me pull up my list right here. I got it. Real deep.
Like who am I picking in my 4th round rookie?
How deep are we talking about? Oh, 4th round?
You know what? Really deep, because I'm in a 16-team super flex that has 5 rounds. So as deep as you would like to go, that you believe in, a guy you believe in.
Man, at that point, it's real tough, because that's kind of where that 5th round in a standard size league is where it really tapers off for me.
Sure.
Yeah.
But if you're going really deep, the last kind of guy I would want would be Tony Jones Jr. from Notre Dame. I've got him as running back 24 right now.
I like it.
But he just shows like enough agility for a big guy, a little bit of wiggle, gets through the gaps, and has pretty good vision for a back that's far down on the list.
So for people who aren't as sick as I am, you can give us another deep sleeper that maybe isn't going to be the 50th guy off the board.
This is the guy I have projected as my last player drafted in a 4-round rookie, and that's Michael Warren, the second out of Cincinnati.
Okay.
Yep, just a good combination of vision, physicality, and size. And
all right, yeah, that's
at that point.
awesome.
It's all dart throws past the 3rd, 4th round. Like it's
right.
Where's the cutoff where you're like, okay, this is just now, like whatever.
Right after Javon Leak, who I have at 21. That's for any standard league. Anything bigger than that, I'll start looking past. But in a normal league, I'm not going past there.
Okay.
Because after that, you've got Raymond Kale, Patrick Taylor, DJ Dallas. They're all just kind of the big backs that are there because they were from a big school and had some numbers, but they're nothing impressive really.
Okay.
And the funny thing is, I know Kyle isn't making this up, but he just named 3 guys that he literally could have just made up a name right there, and I would just believe it because he's going so in depth with this that, you know, there are a lot of guys that people, you know, if they're not doing this, they just haven't heard of. I mean, he could have said Josh Valentine, and I would have been like, sounds
Sure.
like a great guy. I think, you know,
He is.
where did that guy play? You know, listen, that guy never played college ball, but I'm just saying, you know, like, but no, I mean, you go deep into it. You both do, you know, Bill does quarterbacks. Obviously, Kyle, you do the running backs. But yeah, man, appreciate you coming on. It was awesome. Dropped a lot of knowledge. I mean, people who listen to this are definitely going to have a better understanding, not only of the top guys, because, you know, we all hear about the top guys. We hear about our Taylors and our Swifts. But really, when you start going into guys like, you know, Darrington Evans and Zach Moss and, you know, AJ Dillon, all these guys, you know, it's good to hear more information about them because they're not as well publicized. So, Kyle, appreciate you coming on. If you just want to shout out your Twitter handle one more time, anything you might be working on, and where people can find you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on first. It was a lot of fun. This is the first podcast I've done in a long time. Me and my buddies tried to get one started a while ago, but faded out after a couple episodes. We just couldn't keep it up. But so this is great to be back on with you guys talking. The Twitter handle is at Kyle W. Martins. And if you want to know anything else about these other running backs, I've got a list of 30 that I've got detailed notes on. So hit me up on there if you want anything other than what I could think of off the top of my head here. That's it. Just get ready for the Rookie Digest coming out soon, and then we'll have an update after the draft with, updated rankings from everybody, and that's pretty much it that's going on right now.
And listen, Kyle is a nice guy. He has that Canadian blood in him. But really, if you want to see,
Canadian
you know,
hair too.
the hair
Yep.
too. Listen, I got not all of that, so I'm a little
jealous.
But listen, you know, don't hit him up for 30 guys. Buy the Rookie Digest. Like, all his work is there. He's giving you those sweet ass comps that we all want, but he's also breaking it down. He's really getting in depth. He's telling you pros and cons on all of these guys. You know, even those last 3 guys he shouted out that if you ask me to remember their names, I won't. You know,
For those guys, it's mostly cons though.
Yeah. So, you know, he's breaking that all down. So, I mean, he's a nice guy. He'll talk to you for a little bit on Twitter, but, you know, go out, you know, buy the Rookie Digest. That's where all his work is going to be at. I thought you had something, Bill.
So
Yeah, it's
really.
$8, and I think the code is quarantine.
Literally, guys, quarantine. If you're sitting there like, man, I remember there was some kind of promo code and I just don't know what it is, just like think for 3 seconds, and it's probably the 3rd word that's going to come to your mind. Type that in. Even type in the first 2. Who knows? Maybe they'll work too.
Yeah, maybe you'll get more off. Who knows?
But it's quarantine, guys. I mean, we all know, you know, think about my sweet beard right now, you know, whatever helps you remember it. But Kyle, again, you know, thanks a lot for coming on, and I hope we can get you on maybe as the season ends, and we can kind of break down, you know, what guys we got right, what guys we got wrong, and just kind of talk it through. I think that would be a lot of fun too. I definitely want to have you back in the future. You were an awesome guest.
Thanks.
And
I'd love to be back.
And, you know, everybody, you know, I saw people popping in and out of the live stream. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. You know, you can watch the replay on YouTube, you know, or listen to us on the pod. Either way, you know, Bill and I thank you. It's really appreciated. You know, if you're following us on YouTube, just, you know, click the bell and subscribe so you know when we go live. You know, if you're listening to us on the podcast, please, you know, subscribe, give us a rating and review. And remember, guys, you know, Bill and I are going to be looking at those rating and reviews, and we're going to be handing out a couple of free Rookie Digests. So, you know, hey, leave the rating and review. You know, tell us how cool Bill is. You can tell me how awful my beard looks. I don't care. I'm growing it out. Whatever, tell us what you like, and tell us what you don't like, because we do want to see that stuff. We want to keep getting better every episode. So, on that note, Bill, I think we're done here. So tell them.
Late.